Greetings, booktubers, and welcome back to Grammaticus Books. And today we're going to do a two-part video. The first is going to be on red flags with books, and then the second one is a bit of a surprise. I didn't realize I was going to do this second part of the video here until this morning when I was driving back from having done some errands. I'm pulling in, and there on my front porch are 3 packages. So the first part is going to be red flags in books, and then the second part of the video is going to be a surprise mail haul that I suspect are 3 packages of books from Michael K. Vaughan, which I think strongly is what has happened here. And we'll go through and we'll open those up here on the channel, because the unwritten rule, whenever you get packages in the mail, you must open them live on BookTube. So that's the plan. I'll put time hacks to it down here in the timeline, and let's get on with it. Let's get on with red flags in books. So recently there has been a video that's been making its rounds across BookTube, with a number of booktubers doing videos on red flags with books. And what that video is about is you go into somebody's home, you see their bookshelves, and you start looking at their books on their bookshelves. And you see books on there that begin to make you question that individual's mental sanity and their moral ethical fiber and backbone, and due to the selection of the books that they have there on their shelves. This is not that video. This is not that video at all. This is an entirely different video. This is red flags with books when you are going into either a used bookstore or a new bookstore and you're looking for books to buy. You're going down the shelves, you're pulling books off of the shelves at this bookstore, and it doesn't matter if it's a new book or an old book, a vintage science fiction or a vintage fantasy book. And you see something in that book. There's something on the cover, there's something in the contents page, there's some aspect to it that gives you a moment's pause, that raises that red flag that says, I might want to put this one back on the shelf and just go on to a different book. And I definitely have these red flags. I have these 6 red flags that I have when I'm looking at books that are warning bells that tell me that I might want to move on to a different book. Now, these red flags are not written down in stone. There are exceptions to these red flags where you have authors and books that violate or activate these red flags, but are in fact good books. But generally speaking, these are my guidelines for whether I want to buy a book or if I want to pass on this book. So let's get into it. My 6 red flags, taking them in ascending order from 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, from least concerning red flag to absolute most concerning red flag. And let's kick it off. Let's get going. Red flag number 6 is bad cover art. Yes, I judge books by their covers, guilty as charged. And if I see a book and it's got bad cover art, and I mean bad cover art on it, it doesn't attract me to that book. It wants me to walk past it and keep on going. And it also sets off this little voice in the back of my head that says, hey, if your publisher didn't think enough of your story in order to contract somebody to make a decent cover and put a decent cover on your book, if your publisher doesn't have faith enough in your book to do that, then why should I have faith in it to read it and see what's going on in your book? And that is my thought process, and I absolutely will pass by covers or pass by books that have bad cover art. And I know I'm judging a book by its cover. I know this is a pretty flimsy argument, but that's why it's down at number 6 on the red flags, and that's bad cover art. So that's number 6. What's number 5? Number 5 is spin-offs of other successful IPs, of other successful storylines that authors have created. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I've got an example of it right here. Larry Niven creates the Man-Kazin Wars, which is humanity and humanity's allies engaged in interstellar warfare against a barbaric and aggressive race of spacefaring tigers that is called the Man-Kazin War, that was started off of a story by Larry Niven, if I remember correctly, from 1966. And then you have a number of years later, David Drake creates a series of stories called The Fleet, where you have humanity and their allies engaged in an interstellar war against an aggressive spacefaring race of warthogs. So it's David Drake just swapping out tigers, interstellar tigers, for interstellar warthogs, and doing basically the same thing and trying to capitalize, in my opinion, off of Larry Niven's success with the Man-Kazin Wars. And if I see a spin-off of a successful IP that to me looks like it is basically just a rip-off of somebody else's work, that's a red flag to me that tells me that I might want to pass on that book. So that's red flag number 5. What's red flag number 4? Red flag number 4 is debut novels that are in excess of 500 pages in length. Now, I understand that in today's day and age that a 500-page debut novel is not uncommon. In fact, it might actually be the standard of 500 pages plus. But in my view, I don't like to see a huge doorstop of a book as your debut novel. And the bigger it is beyond that 500-page mark, the more of a red flag it is to me. And I'm probably going to pass it up. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, that does seem to be sort of the standard we're going to. And that's one of the big reasons why I don't read very much modern fiction or nonfiction books, because I don't want to pick up a doorstop, particularly if that's your first novel and you don't have an established track record. And here's a good example, an exception to red flag number 4 here, debut novels in excess of 500 pages. Patrick Rothfuss, fantastic author. His debut novel is Name of the Wind, and it came in at 662 pages, and it is a phenomenal book. It's a great book. I should do a video on it here at some point. So there are definitely exceptions to this, like Patrick Rothfuss and Name of the Wind. But generally speaking, if I see that you have a debut novel and it is an absolute doorstop, it is a barbell of a novel that I can use as my weight substitutes in order to do arm crawls, I'm probably going to give you a pass. And that's red flag number 4. And that gets us to red flag number 3. What is red flag number 3? Red flag number 3 is awards from unknown, obscure, or potentially fictitious awards committees. So if I pick up your novel and on the back of it is an endorsement from some very obscure awards committee, that is definitely a red flag for me. Now, there are a lot of good awards committees that are out there. There's various numbers of them. Of course, you got the heavy hitters, like you got the Hugos, you got the Nebulas, you got the Jupiter Awards, you've got the Franz Kafka Awards, and a whole bunch of other ones, the Newbery, that are very well known and people see them and recognize them. But if I pick up your book and it is being pimped, it has got a endorsement from the Klingon Society of Northern California, calls this the best debut novel, SF novel of the year, then I'm going to look askance at that plug, at that recommendation. And it might be a reason for me to put it back on the shelf. In fact, it probably is. And I've seen a number of these where you've got an award from an award committee that is just absolutely, it's obscure, relatively unknown, or perhaps even made up by the author in order to pimp his book. I have come across those. So that is number 3, red flag number 3, getting us down to the nitty gritty here. What is red flag number 2? So red flag number 2 is joint authorship, where you have an author and then you have a co-author. Joint authorship on a book is absolutely a red flag for me. It's a big red flag for me, particularly when you're talking about vintage science fiction and vintage fantasy, more so than modern books. And there's a reason for that. Because these authors who were doing these joint authorships, these co-written books back in the 70s and even in the early 80s, they were doing it pre-internet, which means that they were going to coordinate their efforts on a book, that they had to do it either face-to-face, which was unlikely given the locations of these authors, or else they had to do it by writing correspondence, snail mail, actually writing or typing out their ideas on how to split up a book or a novel, and sending it through the mail to each other, or getting on a phone, like picking up a physical receiver with a phone, doing the little circular rotary dial, dialing long distance, getting hit with long distance bill charges while they coordinated their book back and forth. And in my experience, because of this, particularly with vintage authors writing in the 70s and the early 80s, that you get an extreme amount of discordant material in the books, a very big split between the tone of the book from one author to the other author, and you even get plots that tend to not line up between these authors, and it just doesn't work. It's not as bad with modern authors because you've got the internet, you can do FaceTime, you can exchange emails, text messages, you can get onto some type of media program where you can talk via the internet and coordinate a little bit better. But whenever you have joint authorship on a book where you don't have a single mind directing the book, you've got two different writing styles, it results in a very disjointed novel, in my opinion, that usually is a very strong red flag for me, and that's why it comes in at number 2. There is some exceptions, some notable exceptions to this, and 2 of them are sitting on the shelves here behind me, and one is Lucifer's Hammer, which is a joint collaboration between Jerry Pournelle and Larry Niven. It is excellent, and it's a vintage science fiction book. And then the other Jerry Pournelle, Larry Niven collaboration, The Mote in God's Eye. So again, there is an exception to this one, but generally speaking, joint authorship to me is a giant red flag. And that gets us down to red flag number 1. What is the number 1 red flag when I'm going and looking at books? Joint authorship in a novel. I just said joint authorship in a novel, but this is a slightly different one. It's joint authorship where you have a father-son as the co-authors, where you have a famous father like Lee Child writing the Jack Reacher novels, and then after writing 30 or 40 of these novels, he introduces his son, and he and his son co-write a Jack Reacher novel. Or it's any type of parent-child authorship on a book. To me, this is absolute kiss of death for a book, and I will immediately put it back on the rack and not even look at it, because I know that there's a 99.9% chance that it's going to be absolute garbage. That the famous author, the parent of the child, has put his name up on this book here, and that's probably just about all he did other than giving his child an outline and some suggestions. And then the child, who has maybe half of his talent, if you're lucky, has come in and absolutely butchered the character that his father created or his mother created, as the case may be. And joint authorship with a parent and a child writing the book is the kiss of death and the number 1 red flag here for me when I'm shopping for books. But those are my red flags. What are your guys' red flags? Put it down in the comments section. When you're going through looking at used books or new books that gives you a moment's pause, I'd love to hear about it. Put it down in the comments section, and I will check it out, and I will respond to all those comments. All right, so that's part 1 of the video. Now we're on to part 2, which is the mail haul, which I suspect is from Michael K. Vaughan. He said he was sending me 1 paperback book, and then I get these 3 large packages in the mail here from Michael K. Vaughan, which is very much like him. He's a very generous person. So we're going to open these up here. We're going to see what we've got inside. Michael K. Vaughan, if you don't know who Michael K. Vaughan is, I can't imagine that you're on my tiny, insignificant channel and you don't know who Michael K. Vaughan is. On the off chance that you don't, I will link his channel down in the description below. Do yourself a giant favor and go over and check out his channel. Michael K. Vaughan is literally the gold standard when it comes to booktube and booktube videos. He's been doing booktube for years, and he is absolutely the best booktuber here in our niche of booktube, hands down. It's not even a contest. But here we go. Let's get these packages going. I guess we'll do this one here first. Get out my handy dandy little utility knife here. It's not the world's most expensive knife, but it gets the job done. And let's see what we've got. All right, package number 1. Oh, wow. Yep. This is definitely from Michael. Robert E. Howard, El Borak, and Other Desert Adventures. I just did a video on El Borak. I did it on his book from that was published back in 1974, I think, when it came out. Originally on El Borak, it was called The Lost Valley of Iskander. And this collects all of the El Borak stories that were unpublished, or a large number of them here by Robert E. Howard. Fantastic. Wow, that is absolutely fantastic. Let me, 1 second. There we go, better. Let me look at the contents on here. El Borak and Other Desert Adventures. So it's not just El Borak, but it's El Borak plus some of his other desert heroes. El Borak and Other Desert Adventures, Robert E. Howard, illustrated by Tim Bradstreet and Jim and Ruth Keegan. Look at that. Fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Michael K. Vaughan. That's very generous. We've got Sword of the Hills, Daughter of Erlich Khan, which was in that book I just reviewed. Three-Bladed Doom, the long version. There's a complicated publication history with Three-Bladed Doom. There was originally a short version, and then it was extended, and there's an extended version from 1977. Hawk of the Hills, which was also in that last book I reviewed. We got Blood of the Gods, that's from Son of the White Wolf. Son of the Hawk, Son of the White Wolf. Gold from Tartary, that's a new one for me. Swords of Shahrazar. Swords of Shahrazar. I'm going to go with that pronunciation. That's also a new one. Fantastic. The Trail of the Bloodstained God. The Fire of Ashurbanipal. Three-Bladed Doom, the short version. So you got the long and the short version. And then an Untitled appears here for the first time. Fantastic stuff. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Michael K. Vaughan. Great. That's package number 1. Let's see what's in package number 2. As I'm opening this up here, do a little comment. Michael K. Vaughan, there is a rumor circulating on the internet that the K in Michael K. Vaughan actually stands for Cull, for Michael Cull Vaughan, which I have a tendency to believe is true. And what do we have here? We have, we got Robert E. Howard again. This is a Del Rey. Yep, this is another Del Rey. We have Sword Woman. Sword Woman and Other Historical Adventures. Another great Del Rey edition. Wow. Just unbelievable. Unbelievably generous by Michael. Sword Woman and Other Historical Adventures. Nice little interior drawing there. Check out that art page. A little facing art that you got going on. Nice stuff. Fully illustrated by John Watkins. And this one contains around a dozen stories. This is probably going to be Red Sonja and the likes, I'm guessing. What does this say on the back? The immortal legacy of Robert E. Howard, creator of Conan the Cimmerian, continues with this latest compendium of Howard's fiction and poetry and the legendary sword woman of Dark Agnes. Dark Agnes, who faced with an arranged marriage to a brutal husband of 16th century France, cuts the ceremony short with a dagger thrust and flees to forge a new identity on the battlefield. Dark Agnes. I've never read any Dark Agnes. This is going to be really interesting. Thank you again, Michael. And then we've got the last box over here, which I have no idea what's inside of it. But let's open it up and find out. All right, it is open. Oh my gosh. Check this out. It's the landmark Herodotus. This is a fantastic edition of Herodotus. Michael K. Vaughan did an entire video on this edition of Herodotus. I'll link that video down in the description below. I just did a video on a Herodotus myself. I've got an ancient version from the 1800s of Herodotus, but I don't have a good readable copy, and this fits that bill. And this is one of the best editions there is. It's got a ton of maps in it. It's a fantastic edition. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Michael K. Vaughan. You are far too generous. And again, if you haven't checked out Michael's channel, do yourself a favor and go and subscribe to his channel and check it out. He is the absolute gold standard when it comes to booktube, and our niche of booktube over here. He's number one, in my opinion. Thank you again, Michael. And with that, that's going to wrap this one up. I will be back on Thursday. Thursday, I'm doing a video that is going to be very interesting. I'm really looking forward to that video because it's going to be on Rollerball. It's going to be on Rollerball, the short story from 1973, Rollerball, the movie starring James Caan from 1975, and Rollerball, the remake by John McTiernan, the director of Die Hard from 2002. All things Rollerball. That is going to be a really good video. So tune in, mark your calendars for Thursday. That'll pop up 7 a.m. on Thursday. And with that, I'm going to say take care, be safe, and I will catch you guys next time.